I raised my wine glass at family dinner and said, I can't wait for our Napa Valley trip. Vivian smirked and said, oh, sweetie, did you actually think you were invited? But she had no idea I'd caught her slipping something in my drink, and I was about to ruin her life. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from. Hit that like button and subscribe to Revenge with Nick for more stories about family drama and getting the ultimate revenge. My name is Natasha Reed. I'm 27 years old, and I thought I understood my place in our family. I work as a marketing consultant here in Phoenix, making about $85,000 a year. Nothing glamorous, but I've worked hard for everything I have. I drive a 2020 Honda Civic, live in a decent one-bedroom apartment, and I'm careful with my money because I'm saving for my future. What makes my situation unique is that I'm set to inherit a $1.2 million trust fund when I turn 30 in 3 years. My late mother, who died when I was 23, set it up that way because she wanted me to be mature enough to handle that kind of money. I'll also inherit my father's real estate business someday, which is worth about $4 million. But honestly, I rarely think about that money. I'm focused on building my own career and life. My father, Martin Reed, is a successful real estate developer here in Scottsdale. He's 56, and after my mom died 4 years ago, he was lost. Completely lost. My mother was his everything, and watching him grieve was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. For 2 years, it was just us trying to figure out how to move forward without her. Then Vivian Walsh came into our lives. Vivian is 41 now, and when she met my dad, she was working as a cocktail waitress in Las Vegas while running a lifestyle blog on the side. She's beautiful, I'll give her that. Blonde, fit, always perfectly put together. She told my dad she was taking a break from her successful influencer career to find herself. What she was really doing was looking for a wealthy man to solve her problems. She brought her 20-year-old daughter Chloe with her when she moved to Phoenix. Chloe had been working dead-end jobs in Vegas, but suddenly she was enrolled in Arizona State University with all expenses paid by my father. Designer clothes, new BMW, weekly spa appointments, everything I had worked and saved for, Chloe got handed to her. For the first year, I tried to be welcoming. I really did. I helped Chloe with her college applications, showed her around Phoenix, even invited her to come shopping with me. But there was always this underlying tension. Vivian would make little comments like, Natasha's so independent, isn't she? Some girls just prefer to do everything alone. Or, it's so sweet how Natasha visits sometimes. Career women are so busy these days. The pattern of exclusion started small. My birthday dinner got accidentally double-booked with Chloe's friend's party. Family movie nights happened when I was working late. Holiday traditions my mom and I had started suddenly weren't relevant anymore because they were just for the two of us before. But the worst part was watching my relationship with my father slowly deteriorate. Vivian was subtle about it. She never directly said anything bad about me. Instead, she'd express concern. I worry about Natasha, she'd tell my dad. She seems so stressed lately. Maybe all that independence is taking a toll on her. Or have you noticed how sensitive she's been? I just want her to be happy. Gradually, my father started viewing me differently. When I'd express frustration about being left out, he'd say I was being dramatic. When I tried to spend one-on-one time with him, Vivian would suddenly need him for something urgent. She was pulling him away from me, and he couldn't see it happening. 3 weeks ago, everything started falling into place for what would become the worst and best night of my life. I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner, something I still attended religiously despite feeling more and more like an outsider. My father was in an unusually good mood, talking about a big deal he'd just closed. You know what? He said suddenly, setting down his wine glass. We should celebrate. I'm booking us a long weekend in Napa Valley. Wine country, spa treatments, the works. I felt my heart lift. Dad, that sounds amazing. When were you thinking? Next month, he said. The whole family. We deserve some luxury after this crazy year. Vivian smiled, that perfect smile of hers. Martin, that's such a wonderful idea. Chloe and I have been so stressed with her finals coming up. I'd love to help plan it, I offered eagerly. I have some great connections through work. There's this amazing boutique hotel in St. Helena that my client just featured in a campaign. And I know the marketing director at several wineries. My father's face lit up. That would be fantastic, sweetheart. You always were good at organizing things. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into planning the perfect Napa getaway. I used my professional network to secure reservations at Auberge du Soleil, one of the most exclusive resorts in the valley. I booked us private wine tastings at 3 premier wineries. I arranged couples massage packages at the spa and made dinner reservations at the French Laundry, a restaurant with a 3-month waiting list that I only got into because my agency had done work for their parent company. I even took a personal day off work to coordinate all the details. The total cost was going to be around $8,000 for the weekend, which I knew was a lot, but my father had specifically said he wanted luxury. I made sure every detail was perfect. During those 2 weeks of planning, we had several family dinners where we discussed the trip. What to pack for wine tasting, whether to rent a car or use a driver, which restaurants we were most excited about. Not once, did anyone suggest I wouldn't be coming. We talked about room arrangements. Vivian even asked me to bring specific outfits for our girls' day at the spa. But there was something else happening during those weeks that I was just starting to piece together. For the past 6 months, I'd been having what I thought were anxiety attacks, but only during family dinners. It started small. I'd feel dizzy halfway through the meal, like I'd had too much wine even though I'd only had a glass. Then I'd get confused about conversations, forgetting what we'd been talking about just minutes before. A few times, I'd completely lose chunks of time. I'd remember arriving for dinner, and then suddenly it would be time to leave, with my father looking at me strangely. "Are you feeling okay lately?" he asked me after one particularly bad episode. "You seem distant." Confused. I started keeping a journal, trying to track what might be triggering these episodes. The only consistent factor was family dinners at their house. I even went to my doctor, thinking maybe it was stress from work or some kind of blood sugar issue. All my tests came back normal. Then came the dinner that changed everything. It was a Wednesday night, 2 days before we were supposed to leave for Napa. I arrived at their house in Scottsdale around 6:30 p.m. with a bottle of wine I'd picked up, a nice Pinot Noir from Oregon that cost me $60. I was excited to contribute to what I thought was our last family dinner before the trip. Vivian was in the kitchen when I arrived, putting the finishing touches on what looked like her famous herb-crusted salmon. She was wearing a flowing white dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, her blonde hair perfectly styled even though she'd supposedly been cooking all day. "Natasha." "Perfect timing," she said, giving me one of her air kisses. "I'm just plating everything now. Why don't you open that wine and pour for everyone? The glasses are already on the dining room table." I went to the dining room and started opening the bottle. My father and Chloe were in the living room watching some cooking show, their voices carrying over the sound of the TV. Everything felt normal, familiar. "Actually, honey," Vivian called from the kitchen, "let me handle the wine. I want to make sure everyone's glass is perfect for photos. You know how much I love documenting our family moments for the blog." She came out carrying a small silver tray with 4 wine glasses already poured. I went ahead and opened that lovely bottle you brought. I added just a tiny splash of this organic fruit enhancer I found at Whole Foods. It brings out the berry notes. She handed me my glass with a smile. "This one's yours. I made sure to give you a little extra since you picked such a beautiful wine." Something about the way she emphasized yours felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on why. The wine looked normal, smelled normal. But as I brought it to my lips, I noticed the tiniest hint of something. Chalky? Bitter? I pretended to take a sip while actually keeping my lips closed. Delicious," I said, though I hadn't actually tasted anything. During dinner, Vivian kept glancing at me expectantly. "How's your wine, Natasha? You've barely touched it." "Oh, I'm trying to pace myself," I said casually. "I have an early client meeting tomorrow." As the night went on, I noticed her growing more and more agitated. She kept making pointed comments about how tired I looked, how I seemed overwhelmed by work. When I didn't show any signs of the confusion or dizziness I'd experienced at previous dinners, her frustration became almost palpable. When I excused myself to use the bathroom, I quickly dumped half the wine into the large potted plant in the hallway. When I returned to the table, Vivian's eyes immediately went to my glass. "Oh good, you're finally relaxing," she said with what looked like relief. That's when I knew for certain. Vivian had put something in my wine. All those months of anxiety attacks and confusion, she'd been drugging me. But why? The next night, Thursday, was supposed to be our final family dinner before leaving for Napa on Friday morning. I arrived at their house with a beautiful cheese and charcuterie board I'd spent 2 hours assembling, plus another bottle of wine, this time a $75 Cabernet that I'd been saving for a special occasion. I was genuinely excited. Despite everything that had been happening, despite the weird incident with the wine the night before, I was looking forward to this trip. I thought maybe getting away from Phoenix, having some quality family time in a beautiful setting, might help repair whatever had been going wrong between us. Vivian answered the door wearing a stunning emerald green dress that complemented her eyes perfectly. She'd clearly put extra effort into her appearance tonight. "Natasha, come in, come in. I just finished setting the table with the good china. Tonight feels special, doesn't it?" The dining room looked elegant. Candles, cloth napkins, her best dishes. My father was already seated at the head of the table, looking handsome in a navy button-down shirt. Chloe was scrolling through her phone, her long brown hair falling in waves over a designer top I recognized from Nordstrom. "Dad, you look great," I said, kissing his cheek as I set down the cheese board. "I brought some appetizers for tonight and this amazing Cabernet for the road." "You always think of everything, sweetheart," he said warmly. "I'm so lucky to have such a thoughtful daughter." For a moment, everything felt like it used to. Like the family we'd been before Vivian and Chloe arrived. I allowed myself to relax, to feel hopeful about the weekend ahead. Dinner started normally enough. Vivian had made her signature dish, beef tenderloin with roasted vegetables. We talked about the weather forecast for Napa, perfect, our excitement about the wine tastings, and my father's latest business deal. I was careful about the wine this time, taking only small sips and watching Vivian's reaction, but she seemed distracted tonight. About halfway through the meal, during a lull in conversation, I raised my glass with a smile. "I just want to say how excited I am about tomorrow. I can't wait for our Napa Valley trip. The reservations I made are going to blow you away. The suite at Aubert's du Soleil has this incredible view of the valley, and our dinner at the French Laundry is going to be unforgettable." The silence that followed was deafening. Vivian set down her fork and looked at me with what I can only describe as pity mixed with amusement. "Oh, sweetie," she said slowly, "did you actually think you were invited?" I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Chloe looked up from her phone for the first time all evening, a smirk spreading across her face. "God, this is awkward. Did nobody tell her?" My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Natasha, this trip is, well, it's more of a family bonding thing. You know, for the 4 of us." "The 4 of you?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm your daughter." Vivian reached across the table and patted my hand in a gesture that felt more condescending than comforting. "Of course you are, honey. But this is about my family learning to bond with your father. You know, his real family now." The word real hit me like a physical blow. "I planned this entire trip," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Every reservation, every detail. I used my professional connections, took time off work. And we're so grateful for that." Vivian interrupted. "You're so good at organizing things. It's like having our own personal travel agent." Chloe laughed, actually laughed. "Seriously though, did you really think Dad wanted his ex-family cramping our style? This is about us becoming a real unit." "Ex-family?" I looked at my father, waiting for him to correct her, to defend me. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Maybe next time, sweetheart," he said weakly. "This is just. Vivian and Chloe need this time with me. To feel secure in our family." Vivian nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. And honestly, Natasha, you've seemed so confused and stressed lately. Maybe some time alone would be good for you. You could see someone about those episodes you've been having." The gaslighting was breathtaking. She was using my drug-induced confusion she had caused, as justification for excluding me. "I see," I said quietly, though I didn't see it all. "Not really. You're not upset, are you? Vivian asked with fake concern. Because you seem like you might be having one of those moments again. Maybe you should drink some water and take some deep breaths. I looked around the table at these people who were supposed to be my family. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Chloe was already back to scrolling through her phone, bored by my humiliation. And Vivian was watching me with barely concealed satisfaction. Could you pass the potatoes? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Dinner continued around me like I was invisible. They discussed their packing lists, debated which wineries to visit first, and laughed about inside jokes I wasn't part of. I sat there mechanically eating food I couldn't taste, nodding at appropriate intervals, and dying inside with each passing minute. When dinner ended, I stood and began clearing plates out of habit. Oh, don't worry about that, Vivian said dismissively. You've done enough work for this trip already. We'll handle cleanup. The message was clear, your services are no longer needed. I drove home that night in complete silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. Once I was safely inside my apartment, I sat on my couch and let the tears come. I cried for the little girl who had lost her mother too young. I cried for the relationship with my father that was slipping away. But mostly, I cried from pure rage. By morning, something had shifted. The hurt was still there, a constant ache in my chest, but alongside it was a white-hot anger that brought everything into sharp focus. I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. I needed to understand what was really happening in my family, and I needed to figure out what to do about it. First, I took the wine glass from the night before. I'd brought it home, by accident, to a lab testing facility downtown. I told them I suspected someone had put something in my drink at a party, and I wanted to know what it was. The technician, a kind woman in her 50s, told me results would be ready in 24 hours. While I waited, I did something I probably should have done months ago, a comprehensive background check on Vivian Walsh. For $49.99, I got access to her credit history, employment records, and financial information. What I found was shocking. Vivian had $47,000 in credit card debt spread across 8 different cards. She'd been fired from her cocktail waitress job for stealing from the register. Her successful lifestyle blog had exactly 847 followers and made approximately $23 per month in ad revenue. She'd been evicted from 2 apartments in Las Vegas for non-payment of rent. But the most interesting discovery came when I searched her Pinterest account. Under a board titled Financial Planning, which she'd made private but forgot to make secret, I found dozens of pins about things like how to contest a will, signs of mental illness in young adults, and what happens when someone is declared mentally incompetent. My blood ran cold as I realized what I was looking at. Vivian wasn't just trying to isolate me from my father for emotional reasons. She was planning to challenge my inheritance by proving I was mentally unfit. The lab results confirmed my suspicions. The wine contained traces of Ambien enough to cause confusion, memory loss, and disorientation, but not enough to be dangerous. Vivian had been systematically drugging me for months, creating evidence of instability to use against me later. I spent the rest of the day researching Arizona inheritance law and the process for challenging mental competency. What I learned terrified me. If someone could prove I was mentally ill or incompetent, they could indeed contest my trust fund. And with my father as my closest relative, any money would likely go to him and, by extension, his wife. Vivian's plan was diabolical in its simplicity. Drug me regularly to create confusion and erratic behavior. Isolate me from my father so he'd be more likely to believe I was unstable. Document my episodes for use as evidence. Then, when the time was right, challenge my fitness to inherit and take control of my money. The only flaw in her plan was that she'd gotten greedy. The Napa trip exclusion was so cruel, so blatant, that it finally opened my eyes to what was really happening. That evening, I drove to Best Buy and purchased a small nanny cam disguised as a picture frame. I also bought a voice recording app for my phone and practiced using it until I could start recording without looking at the screen. If Vivian wanted to play games, I was going to play to win. Over the next 48 hours, while my family was supposedly enjoying their luxury Napa getaway, I developed a plan that would expose Vivian for exactly what she was, a gold-digging fraud who was slowly destroying my family from the inside. My strategy had 3 phases. Phase 1 was documentation. I installed the nanny cam in the living room at my father's house while they were gone. I had a key and knew their security code, so getting in was easy. I positioned the camera where it could record the kitchen and dining room areas where family meals took place. I also set up a hidden voice recorder app on my phone that could capture conversations without being obvious. Phase 2 was financial exposure. This was where my marketing background really came in handy. I created a detailed financial profile of Vivian's spending using my father's credit card statements, which I could access because I'd helped him set up online banking 2 years ago. I documented every purchase she'd made in the past 6 months: $3,200 at Nordstrom, $1,800 at Ulta Beauty, $850 at Whole Foods for organic wellness products, $2,400 for Chloe's spring break trip to Cabo. The list went on and on. I also researched every restaurant, hotel, and winery they'd be visiting in Napa, along with their cancellation policies and credit card requirements. Lastly, phase 3 was social destruction. I created a fake Instagram account using stock photos of a generic blonde woman and followed all of Vivian's friends, local influencers, and Phoenix social circle. I began documenting her posts about the Napa trip, her lifestyle blog content, and most importantly, her spending habits and lies about her background. But my masterstroke was simpler than any elaborate revenge plot. I was going to use Vivian's own greed and desperation against her. You see, I'd been very careful when making those Napa reservations. Everything was booked through my business account and paid for with deposits only. The balance, about $6,000, wasn't due until check-in. And I'd very strategically made sure that all the final payments would need to be made with the credit card of the primary guest. Since they'd excluded me from their family trip, I saw no reason to pay for it. But I went one step further. Using my industry connections, I upgraded several of their reservations. That couple's massage? I changed it to the premium package with additional treatments. The standard wine tasting? Now it was the exclusive reserve tasting with rare vintages. Their nice hotel dinner? I moved it to the chef's table experience. Every upgrade went directly onto Vivian's credit cards, which I knew were already maxed out. I also made one additional reservation they didn't know about, a photographer to capture their special family moments. At $800 for a 2-hour session, it would put Vivian over her credit limit at the exact moment she'd be trying to look sophisticated and wealthy in public. While they were living it up in wine country, I spent the weekend installing security cameras in my own apartment, changing all my passwords, and meeting with an estate planning attorney to protect my inheritance with additional safeguards. By Sunday night, I was ready for whatever came next. Monday morning, I was back at work, checking my phone constantly for updates. I'd set up Google alerts for the restaurants and hotel they were staying at, hoping to catch any social media posts about their trip. The first sign of trouble came at 11:37 a.m. Vivian's Instagram story showed her at the hotel spa, clearly frustrated. The caption read, "When technology fails, but we're making the best of it. #blessed, Napa life, #family time." But if you looked closely at the background, you could see her arguing with someone at the front desk. 20 minutes later, another story, a photo of an expensive-looking lunch with the caption, "Treating my family to the best." #spoiled, #living my best life. But her smile looked forced, and Chloe was nowhere to be seen in any of the photos. The real fireworks started at dinner. At 7:45 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. "Is this Natasha Reed? This is Jennifer from Auberge du Soleil. We're having an issue with the Reed party's payment method. Could you please call me?" I didn't call back. Instead, I opened Instagram and watched Vivian's story unfold in real time. She'd posted a photo of the elegant restaurant dining room with the caption, "Date night at the French Laundry. Living our best life." But the timestamp showed she'd posted it at 8:15 p.m., which was weird because their reservation wasn't until 8:30. Then at 8:47 p.m., everything fell apart. A user called at Napa Foodie posted a video on TikTok that was starting to go viral. It showed a blonde woman in a green dress having a complete meltdown at the French Laundry, screaming at the hostess about credit card processing errors while an older man and younger woman stood nearby looking mortified. The caption read, "When keeping up appearances goes wrong, money with wings, hashtag nap drama, hashtag credit card declined, hashtag secondhand embarrassment." The video had 12,000 views and climbing. But the real goldmine came from the photographer I'd secretly hired. She'd been discreetly documenting their trip and sending me photos throughout the weekend. The final batch she sent Monday evening told the whole story. Photo 1. Vivian at the hotel front desk, clearly arguing with staff while my father stood behind her looking confused. Photo 2. Chloe crying in the hotel lobby while surrounded by shopping bags, probably realizing their shopping spree was over. Photo 3. My father at the concierge desk, apparently trying to sort out the payment issues while Vivian paced behind him on her phone. Photo 4. The aftermath of the restaurant scene. Vivian sitting alone at their table, face red and tear-streaked, while my father and Chloe waited outside. But the photographer's real gift was the audio she'd captured. Using a directional microphone, she'd recorded Vivian's conversation with the restaurant manager. "This is impossible. My husband is Martin Reed. He's worth millions. There must be some mistake with your system. Ma'am, I've run the card 3 times. It's been declined. Do you have another form of payment? Run it again. This is embarrassing. Do you know who we are? I understand your frustration, but this is ruining our family vacation. My stepdaughter set this up. She must have done something. She's been acting crazy lately. She's probably sabotaging us." And there it was. Even in her moment of public humiliation, Vivian was trying to blame me. The photographer told me that other diners had started recording once Vivian began yelling. By Tuesday morning, there were at least 6 different videos of the incident circulating on social media. The tags were brutal. Hashtag VivenReed, hashtag Napa Karen, hashtag credit card declined, hashtag fake influencer, hashtag gold digger. Vivian's carefully curated image was being destroyed in real time by strangers on the internet who'd witnessed her meltdown. They returned from Napa on Tuesday evening, and I knew they'd be coming for me. I'd spent the day preparing for war. Wednesday morning, my father called. His voice was tired, confused, and angry. "Natasha, we need to talk. Can you come over tonight? There are some things we need to discuss." "Of course, Dad. Is everything okay? How is Napa?" There was a long pause. "Just come over around 6. We'll talk then." I arrived at exactly 6 p.m. with a folder full of documents, my phone fully charged with the recording app ready, and a calm determination I'd never felt before. I was done being the victim in this story. Vivian answered the door, and she looked terrible. Her usual perfect makeup couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes or the fact that she'd been crying. Her Instagram-worthy appearance was nowhere to be found. "Natasha," she said coldly. "Come in. Your father's waiting in the living room." My father was sitting in his recliner, staring at a stack of papers on the coffee table. Credit card statements, I realized. Chloe was curled up on the couch, looking younger than her 20 years and avoiding eye contact with everyone. "Sit down, Natasha," my father said without looking up. "We need to figure out what happened this weekend." I remained standing. "What do you mean?" Vivian jumped in immediately. "Don't play innocent. You sabotaged our trip. You changed our reservations, upgraded things we didn't ask for, and somehow manipulated our credit cards to get declined at the worst possible moment." "I'm sorry," I said calmly, "but I'm confused. I thought I wasn't part of this family trip. Why would I have anything to do with your reservations?" My father finally looked up. "Because you made all the original bookings. And somehow, everything got changed to more expensive options that we never approved." "Dad," I said, sitting down across from him, "all I did was make the initial reservations based on what you asked for. Luxury accommodations, the best restaurants, premium experiences. When you told me I wasn't invited, I figured you'd handle any changes yourselves." "But the payments," Vivian started. "What about them?" I interrupted. "You told me this was for your family. I assumed you'd be paying for your family vacation." The room fell silent as they realized the flaw in their accusation. They'd excluded me from the trip but somehow expected me to pay for it. Anyway, I continued, I'm more concerned about something else. I pulled out the lab report from my folder. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you noticed anything strange about my behavior at family dinners lately? He frowned. Well, yes. You've seemed confused, disoriented. Sometimes you forget entire conversations. I've been worried about you. Have you ever considered that there might be an external cause for that confusion? Vivian's face went pale. What are you implying? I handed my father the lab report. I had the wine from last Thursday's dinner tested. The wine that Vivian specifically poured for me with her special fruit enhancer. My father read the report, his expression changing from confusion to horror. Ambien? Natasha, this says there was Ambien in your wine. Enough to cause confusion, memory loss, and disorientation, I confirmed. Which explains all those episodes I've been having at family dinners. That's impossible, Vivian said, but her voice was shaking. You must have taken it yourself. You've been so stressed lately. Then how do you explain this? I pulled out my phone and showed them the hidden camera footage I'd captured. The video clearly showed Vivian dropping something into my wine glass while my father and Chloe were in the other room. My father's face went from confused to furious in seconds. Vivian, what the hell is this? It's not what it looks like, she said desperately. She's been acting so erratic, so unstable. I thought maybe something to help her relax. You've been drugging my daughter? My father stood up, his voice getting louder. For how long? Martin, you don't understand. She's been trying to turn you against me since the day we met. She's jealous, she's possessive, and she's been sabotaging our family from the beginning. I pulled out the next piece of evidence, printouts of her Pinterest boards. Is that why you've been researching how to challenge someone's mental competency? Why you've been looking up inheritance laws and what happens when someone is declared mentally unfit? Vivian grabbed the papers from my father's hands, her last pretense of innocence crumbling. You've been spying on me. This is invasion of privacy. And this, I continued, pulling out her financial records, is fraud. Dad, did you know Vivian has $47,000 in credit card debt? That she was fired from her last job for stealing? That her successful lifestyle blog makes $23 a month? My father looked at Vivian with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure betrayal mixed with disgust. You lied to me, he said quietly. About everything. What happened next was the most intense family confrontation I've ever witnessed. Vivian completely lost control. You want to know the truth? She screamed, pointing at me. Fine. Yes, I gave you some Ambien. You were making Martin doubt our relationship, constantly undermining me, making him think he should put you first over his wife. I'm his daughter. I shot back. You're a spoiled brat who can't accept that daddy has a new family. You've been sabotaging us from day one, and I was protecting my marriage. My father stepped between us. Protecting your marriage by drugging my daughter? By making me think she was having mental health issues. She was having issues. She's obsessed with money, obsessed with that trust fund, and she was never going to accept me or Chloe as family. Because you never wanted us to be family. I yelled. You wanted to isolate me from my father so you could control his money. What money? Vivian laughed bitterly. You think I'm some gold digger? Martin's comfortable, but he's not rich enough to retire on. The real money is yours, that trust fund, the business you'll inherit. Did you think I didn't know about that? And there it was. Her real confession. My father's voice was deadly quiet. You married me to get access to Natasha's inheritance. I married you because I loved you, Vivian said, but her voice lacked conviction. But yes, I thought if Natasha wasn't in the picture, if she was proven incompetent or unstable, then you'd inherit her money and we could have a real life together. So you've been poisoning her for months, my father said, documenting her confusion to use as evidence against her mental state. It wasn't poison. It was just sleeping medication. I wasn't trying to hurt her, just make her seem unreliable, unfit to handle that kind of money. Chloe, who had been silent through this entire exchange, finally spoke up. Mom, what the hell? You told me Natasha was just being dramatic about feeling sick. You said she was faking it for attention. I was protecting you too. Vivian turned on her daughter. Do you want to go back to our apartment in Vegas? Do you want to drop out of ASU and work at a casino for the rest of your life? I want you to stop being crazy, Chloe yelled back. This isn't protecting anyone. This is psychotic. Don't call me crazy. Vivian was completely unhinged now. I did everything for this family. I made Martin happy. I gave him a reason to live after his precious wife died, and this is how I'm repaid? By being attacked by his ungrateful daughter, who can't stand to share. Share. I stood up, facing her directly. You didn't want me to share, Vivian. You wanted me gone. You wanted me declared mentally incompetent so you could steal my inheritance. You systematically isolated me from my father, drugged me to create evidence of instability, and then planned to have me legally declared unfit. Prove it, she said defiantly. So I did. I pulled out the final piece of evidence I'd been saving, a recording I'd made of her talking to someone on the phone. I'd used a listening device to capture her conversation with what sounded like a lawyer. The recording was damning. If we can establish a pattern of mental instability, yes, the trust fund could be challenged. If her father is willing to testify about her erratic behavior, the confusion, the memory issues. No, he doesn't know what's causing it. He thinks it's stress from work. How long? About 6 months of documented episodes should be enough. My father listened to his wife's voice planning to steal his daughter's inheritance, and I watched 20 years of grief and loneliness crystallize into pure rage. Get out, he said quietly. Martin, let me explain. Get out, he roared. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. I never want to see you again. Vivian looked around the room desperately, realizing that her perfect plan had not only failed, but had destroyed her completely. You can't throw me out. I'm your wife. This is my home too. No, my father said, pulling out his phone. You're a fraud who married me under false pretenses and attempted to poison my daughter. I'm calling my lawyer tonight to start divorce proceedings, and I'm calling the police to report attempted assault. Attempted assault? Vivian laughed hysterically. Over some sleeping pills? Over months of systematically drugging someone without their consent in order to steal their inheritance, I corrected. In Arizona, that's assault, fraud, and attempted theft. You're looking at felony charges. The reality of her situation finally hit Vivian. Her face crumpled, and she started crying, not the elegant tears of a wronged woman, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone whose world was collapsing. Please, she begged my father. Please don't do this. I love you. I love our family. I made mistakes, but I can change. We can work this out. You poisoned my daughter, my father said simply. There's no coming back from that. Chloe stood up, looking disgusted with her mother. I'm going to pack my stuff. I'll stay with friends until I can figure something else out. Chloe, don't abandon me too, Vivian pleaded. You abandoned yourself when you decided to drug someone for money, Chloe replied. This is sick, Mom. Even for you. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of lawyers, police reports, and legal proceedings. Vivian was arrested and charged with assault and attempted fraud. The evidence against her was overwhelming, the lab reports, the recorded conversations, the financial documents showing her motives, and the Pinterest boards detailing her research into challenging inheritances. She ultimately pled guilty to a reduced charge in exchange for 5 years of probation and restitution for the Napa trip expenses. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order preventing her from contacting me or my father. But the legal consequences were nothing compared to the social destruction she faced. The videos from the Napa restaurant incident had gone viral, racking up over 2 million views across various platforms. Her lifestyle blog, already barely functional, was flooded with comments from people who recognized her from the videos. Someone doxed her and revealed her real financial situation, her employment history, and her criminal charges. Chloe, to her credit, completely cut ties with her mother and transferred to a community college to finish her degree. My father helped her get a job at one of his business partners' companies, and she's been working to pay her own way ever since. She apologized to me dozens of times, swearing she had no idea what her mother was really doing. I knew she was jealous of you, she told me during one of our conversations. But I thought it was just normal stepmom stuff. I never imagined she was actually drugging you. My father entered therapy to deal with the guilt and trauma of nearly losing his daughter to someone he'd brought into our lives. He was devastated that his need for companionship after my mother's death had made him so vulnerable to manipulation. "I failed you," he told me during one of our first real conversations after everything came out. "I let a stranger turn me against my own daughter. I don't know how to forgive myself for that." It took time, but we rebuilt our relationship slowly. Family dinners became just the two of us again, and I started staying in his guest room a few nights a week to help us reconnect. He changed his will to include additional protections for my inheritance and set up safeguards to prevent anyone from manipulating him financially in the future. 6 months later, Vivian was working at a Target in a suburb of Phoenix, living in a studio apartment and trying to rebuild her life with her destroyed credit and criminal record. I occasionally saw updates about her through mutual acquaintances. She'd tried to restart her lifestyle blog under a different name, but people always recognized her and called her out. The irony wasn't lost on me that her attempt to steal my inheritance had ultimately made me more financially secure than ever. My father, terrified of losing me again, had immediately transferred a significant portion of his assets into my name and set up systems to protect both of us from future manipulation. 1 year after the night that changed everything, my father and I took a trip to Napa Valley. The real one this time, just the two of us, staying at the same hotel where Vivian had her meltdown, eating at the restaurants where she'd embarrassed herself. We were sitting on the terrace at Auberge du Soleil, watching the sunset over the valley, when my father raised his wine glass. "To my daughter," he said, "who saved both of us from the biggest mistake of my life." To family, I replied, "Real family." As we clinked glasses, I reflected on everything that had happened. Vivian had tried to destroy my relationship with my father, steal my inheritance, and ruin my mental health. Instead, she'd made our family stronger than it had ever been. The trust fund that she'd been so desperate to steal? I'd used part of it to start my own marketing consultancy, which was now thriving. The business I was supposed to inherit someday? My father made me a partner immediately, and we were working together better than we ever had before. Vivian had been right about one thing. There was real money in our family. She just hadn't realized that by trying to steal it, she'd lose everything she actually had. Sometimes the people who try to destroy your family end up showing you exactly how strong your real bonds are. Vivian thought she could replace me in my father's life, but all she really did was remind both of us how much we meant to each other. The last I heard, she was still working retail and living alone, her dreams of wealth and status completely destroyed by her own greed. Meanwhile, my father and I were planning another trip, this time to Greece, the cruise she'd originally planned to exclude me from. Have you ever dealt with someone who tried to manipulate your family or steal from you? How did you handle it? Share your stories in the comments below, and if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Revenge with Nick for more stories about family drama, revenge, and justice served cold. Thanks for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply letting toxic people destroy themselves.